So the last time pre-draft show that we saw you, actually, it was also during the draft show that this was the case. We had 5 local teams in the playoffs. We had Jay's favorite team in the playoffs, the Philadelphia 76ers. Well, guess what? They're all out. So no Jay bias, no local bias today. We're going to hate everybody equally. Enjoy. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan.
Let me do this straight. I just want to put the road out there. We back up. Hey, that's like bad bye.
Gotta love every Stringer Bell reference that we're going to see online. Good evening, by the way. This is the On the Sports Lines Conference Finals edition, or as I put down, May 18th, 2023. By the way, please note there could be any of 4 animals that interrupt this webcast at any time during the night, so please be advised. All right. So we will be talking about one of those locals in the form of the last local team standing. That would be the Knicks in just a moment. And of course, the 4 teams that are left in the NBA and NHL. And spoiler alert, the word bubble is going to come up a time or two tonight, whether you like it or not. But first, let's get to Jay's favorite team and get to an ongoing topic in the NBA. After a Game 7 disaster and a half, which literally happened in a half, against the Celtics on Sunday, and 3 straight second-round exits, and an 0-3 record in clinching games, and 6 losses in those 3 second-round series mentioned on their own home court, yeah, Doc Rivers' time in Philadelphia kind of had to end. It continues the trend of coaches getting the pink slip. 4 former coaches that made the NBA Finals and 3 that won a title have gotten the shaft so far in the last few months. Now, Jay, we can take this any way you want. We can talk about Doc's time in Philly first, then we can kind of get to everybody else. Let's talk about Doc's time in Philly first. Was it shaky at best? Was this the right call to move on from Doc?
All right. I'm going to take a bit of a winding road because I got a couple of, I guess, a bunch of things I want to touch on.
A lot of bumps coming, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of bumps.
Let me start with this. I can't say I'm surprised. I'll start there. The Sixers, and I said this to you guys on text, the Sixers can't lose those last 2 games to Boston in both the way they lost, I mean, the type of losses, first giving away a win they had in hand in Game 6, which would have closed out the series, and then completely shitting the bed in the second half of Game 7 while letting Jason Tatum destroy them en route to a rout, and in the order in which they lost them. To be fair, it's not just on Doc. It's also on Joel Embiid and James Harden and everyone else with Sixers on the front of the jersey. Oliver Queen's famous quote line is appropriate, hence the T-shirt, all right? They all failed the city of brotherly love. And not only did they do it badly, but they did it against the hated Celtics. Look, Doc now has 10 Game 7 losses. He's 6-10 overall with 5 straight. That's the most in NBA postseason history, twice as many as the coach with the second most, which ironically is Pat Riley of all people, who is 6-5 all time. The 24-point loss to Boston was the worst Game 7 loss in franchise history. I always say you can't file it at players, so when you have a mandate to at least get to the conference finals, when you have the best roster of the Joel Embiid era and you still flame out in the second round, well, you've probably pretty much sealed your fate as the 76ers head coach. Look, Philly's a good job. The team is a contender with an MVP as its alpha, but it's a very tough city to play and coach in with the team's fan base and the city's media. No surprise, Mike D'Antoni's being linked to the job due to all the Houston connections, but I think that would be a terrible idea. D'Antoni's a horrible X's and O's coach and has been totally indifferent to defense throughout his career. Stephen A. Smith has already declared that if D'Antoni is hired, then James Harden got Doc fired. And while I long ago, about the time he blocked Anthony on social media, stopped giving much, if any, credence to anything Stephen A. says, Harden has not consistently had his A game in the playoffs since coming to Philly, and changing the focus of the team to a Harden-centric one would be disastrous. This is Embiid's team, and whoever takes over the bench needs to keep it that way. Look, Sixers lost in 6 in the second round of Miami last year after being tied 2-2. Harden shot 41% from the floor, averaged 1.5 free throws per game, 4 turnovers per game, and 12.5 points in the last 2 games. They lose to Boston in the second round this year after being up 3-2. Harden shot 26% from the floor, a combined 1 of 11 from 3, averaged 5 turnovers per game, and averaged 11 points in those last 2 games. There have been rumors all season Harden will exercise his player option and opt out. If he does, then maybe it's time to move on from him. Sometimes addition by subtraction is a good thing, even if it means the team takes a step backward in the short term. And while Sixers GM Daryl Morey did say that he'd like to have Harden back, he also said that the team feels good about alternate scenarios as well. Though he did caveat that with the following quote: "If he's not back, we'll have to get creative, and we feel good about the tools available to us if that happens." Look, I can understand why Doc was fired, but does that mean he should have been fired? When Joel Embiid, your star player, has an MVP season under you, a coach he says he loves playing for, when Tyrese Maxey, your young star, blossoms into a solid complimentary 20-point-per-game scorer in his third season, and when you get Harden, at least during the regular season, to buy into being a primary facilitator, secondary scorer role for the better of the team, maybe firing your coach isn't the right move, even if it's a defensible move. You can call me old school, and the rabbi has, and not as a compliment, but it used to be that successful head coaches only got fired when they stopped being successful, which used to mean missing the playoffs for 3 years in a row. Now successful head coaches are being fired left and right since the regular season ended because in the minds of their owners, they stopped being successful enough. And even if it didn't seem like you'd lost a locker room, like Rivers and Monty Williams, it used to be that winning a title in your tenure bought you some breathing room to rebound from a bad season or two, but apparently that's no longer the case either, as both Nick Nurse and Mike Budenholzer got canned despite raising a banner to the rafters. Look, like every coach, Doc Rivers has his issues, his faults, his stubborn adherence to certain tenets, schemes, and philosophies, but he is a good coach. And this team is in a different place than it was when it fired Brett Brown and replaced him with Rivers. The organization has stopped trusting the next step of the process because they have a timeline in their heads for at least getting past round 2, 3 years apparently, and Doc didn't meet the timeline. It's becoming a thing across the association, and it's starting to annoy me. Just because you can fire a coach doesn't mean you should fire a coach, especially if he's a good coach. All that does is temporarily pacify an irate fan base. And maybe we should all be taking a lesson from Giannis and redefining what failure really means in the NBA. Here endeth the rant.
Well, the rant is going to get a response in a second, but
I know.
Respond to that.
Well, I mean, this is an example of what Janet Jackson had a song called "What Have You Done For Me Lately?"
For me lately.
This is definitely it. I mean, you get back to last year, Frank Vogel. I mean, he was like 2 years removed for winning a championship with the Lakers, and he's the fall guy for a Lakers team that underperformed and was badly constructed by the front office. I mean, it's a situation where we were seeing that the timetable and the patience with the front office staff is just getting shorter and shorter. Like Monty Williams, I think it's the biggest surprise, without question, when you think about the Phoenix Suns, the best stretch of success the last 3-4 seasons, winning over 60% of his games. You think about the job he did with this young team from the bubble, then to the NBA Finals, where they did have a two games lead over Milwaukee, and even last year having the best record in the NBA. But when you look at the way the Suns season ended, back-to-back seasons, with basically getting blown out and humiliated in a home court. And not to mention with Monty Williams, he's having a new owner who might want to bring in his own guy. I think that was kind of the recipe for dismissal on his end, even though I totally disagree with getting rid of him. Mike Budenholzer, I mean, you think about that, he was the best record in the NBA, and he got upset by what we now see a Miami Heat team that is just rolling through the playoffs all of a sudden, and he's gone. And obviously, you think about the relationship he had with Giannis. You talked about relationship with star players. He had a great relationship with Giannis, and Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton in particular. Nick Nurse, I mean, brought a championship to Toronto. And you think about that box zone defense and how it just came out, how it just kind of like a new wave as far as defending great shooting teams. We saw it when in the finals against Golden State back in 2019, how it did frustrate the Warriors for most of that series. And it's just right now it is just a what have you done from business. And unfortunately, when the players underperform, the coaches are always supposed to want to go. You can't fire the players, and the owners clearly don't fire themselves. So it's just one of those things. We see it in other sports too, but in the NBA, at least lately, it's really been like it's on NFL levels when it comes to firing right now.
This is what I mean, guys. Think about this. Think about the coaches who got fired after their turn in the playoffs. They lose the knockout, the elimination game. They lose it badly. Their star players do not play well. And what happens? The fan base loses their collective minds because they have the expectations in their own heads. Milwaukee's got Giannis, best player in the game, and the Suns went out and got, Durant, and the Sixers have them beaten Harden. But this is the thing I'm saying. It does beg the question. If it had been a tight-fought series and you had lost at the end, but you clearly left it all on the floor, in each of those three instances, if that had been the way it ended, would those guys still be there? And if the answer to that question is yes, then the owners are basically caving in to pacify an irate fan base who did not like the way their team went out and lays the blame at the feet of a coach.
By the way, the answers to all of these questions are no, because of all of the stuff that was mitigated around it. Now, what I think is really the case of all of this stuff is these coaches are going to get jobs again. It's just once this fit ends, the best thing for Mike Budenholzer is to find a new job, because you're not going to hit too many other peaks with Milwaukee after all of the stuff that happened in that series. The best fit for Doc Rivers, because he did the same thing in LA. After losing a series where he was a big favorite to Denver in 2020 in the bubble, he came to Philadelphia. That's not done unless Doc wants to be done, and Doc might want to go. In these situations, these are like deck chairs on the Titanic. They're going to be placed in those spots. Nick Nurse hadn't won a title in 4 years, and I think Toronto was just getting, the two sides just weren't getting along. And there's other stuff.
Yeah, Nurse is the one where maybe,
Exactly. And even with Monty, again, the other thing you have to remember is all of these situations, and I know Eric Spoelstra mentioned this yesterday during his pregame press conference for Game 1, that this is just a very concerning trend. And it might be a concerning trend, but you do have to realize that all of these situations, if you have new owners, like at Philadelphia or Milwaukee, like Bill Parcells said, if you're going to cook the dinner, you're going to want to shop for the groceries. And the groceries that they were given were not them. So unfortunately, guess what? The owner buys the team. The owner has the right to hit the reset button and not necessarily deal with what they were given. And they have an opening to hit the reset button. So as much as, and again, the NBA is not one of these leagues that does coaches wrong, because guess what? A lot of coaches get jobs again.
I don't know that I agree with that statement, Rabbi. There are plenty of coaches that have been done wrong by their team.
Hey, look.
Hold on. Let me finish up before we do this. Doc Rivers is one of the 15 greatest coaches named by the press because of the title he won in 08 and what he's done. He's gotten 3 head coaching jobs in almost 16 years. All of these coaches, Monty Williams has had a bunch of different chances and got to a finals and is still a very respected member of the league. He's going to get another coaching job, whether it be this year or next year. It's not doing the coaches wrong. It's the organization not fitting. And all of this is unfortunately sad that it all happened at the same time. But guess what? Coincidences happen in sports, and this is one of them. So it's not a conspiracy. It's not a let's work out everything. It has nothing to do with all of these, the fan bases are pissed off. The fan bases are going to be pissed off whether you give them a new coach or not.
I disagree with that completely.
That's not true, because I think there's more Sixers fans that are pissed off today at James Harden than they were at Doc Rivers.
I gotta disagree with this because, and I'm being a little biased because I did meet his dad years ago, but Steven Silas got a raw deal in Houston. I mean, look, he got a front office that was not committed to winning, that did nothing outside of just collect young players and you give this organization any snippet of trying to be a respectable basketball team, and they dismissed him after a couple of seasons. I mean, The guy literally had no shot of winning one iota and got the short end of the stick. And look, Uman Doka, I'm happy he's getting a great, again, another opportunity. I thought he did a tremendous job with Boston last season. But to see what the Rockets did to Steven Silas and not really giving him any hope of trying to turn this team around and then just dismissing him the way they did. That's an example of a team can really can screw over a head coach and mainly by not giving him what he needs to try to be successful and then punishing him by not being successful.
And Rabbi, I'm sorry to say that these owners are not, instant gratification type of people who have no fracking patience to allow something to happen. Win now. I got to win now. Even if it's not necessarily the right move, I'm sorry. Don't tell me that is not starting to pervade the NBA, because it is.
Well, if you're the Suns and you have a 34-year-old Kevin Durant, you need to win now. If you're the Bucks and you have an aging core outside of Giannis, you need to win now. If you're the Sixers and you have a guy who is at least very healthy now, that window is not long. That's why they need.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the coaches that they had would not have been able to recover and rebound the next year. And maybe the front office would have provided them the pieces, and maybe things would have shook out the right way in terms of injuries. To say that simply changing the coach is what needs to be done, I'm sorry. That is a knee-jerk ownership reaction because they do not like the way a season ended.
I understand that completely, but you're also doing that coach a disservice if you're putting him in under a lobster pot for the entire next season, which they would have been doing. So I feel like,
if they think they're in one, it's because the media puts them there.
Well, I need to move on, but you can even look at Doc Rivers and you can see the numbers. He put himself there in a lot of those situations. All right. So the Knicks' high hopes, our fans' high hopes, when they saw an 8 seed in Miami on the other side, got slowly deflated until last Friday night when the Knicks season came to an end in Miami at the hands of the Heat. While the positives of the first conference semis since 2012-13 outweigh the negatives of it, ending in the same Game 6 as it did a decade earlier, let's look ahead. The Knicks have a stable core this offseason. They don't really have a lot of free agency decisions that they have to make. But Anthony, they still have an offseason list. Every team does. But what's a positive that the Knicks can take from 22-23 and lead it over to 23-24?
Before I start, I want to put this out there. Those morons that defaced the Julius Randle poster after Game 6 last week at Madison Garden, they're not Knicks fans, okay? Those are jackasses. Put down the pitch to number one.
Grow up.
But the positive is the most obvious. It's Jalen Brunson. I mean, when the Knicks inked into a 4-year, $104 million deal, many skeptics, myself included, thought that the Knicks overpaid for a good point guard. And boy, the Knicks got more than could have asked for out of Brunson. The regular season, he averaged 24 a game, 6 assists to go 3.5 rebounds, while shooting 49% from the field and 41% from threes. Surprisingly, did not make the All-Star team and did not make All-NBA, but he was even better in the postseason. 27 points a game in the playoffs for the Knicks, 5 assists and 5 rebounds a night. Top 10 in the postseason scoring, shooting 47% from the field. And he was the most reliable in clutch situations, 63% of his shots when the game was in 5 points or less with 5 minutes to go. When the Knicks needed him the most, particularly in the first round, he answered the call. 27 in game 1 against Cleveland, 29 in game 4, including the dagger 3-pointers to go up 3-1 on Cleveland. Then he follows it up with scoring 30 and 38 in the Knicks' 2 lone victories over Miami in round 2. This is clearly obvious that the Knicks has become Brunson's team. He left it all on the line in the elimination game, 41 points. He played the entire 48 minutes in game 5, played over 40 minutes again in game 6. He has become the personification of what Tom Thibodeau wants in his guys. Hard nosed, hard working, and obviously very passionate and disciplined about the game. By the way, Boston the first Knicks Patrick Ewing to score 30 points in 3 consecutive postseason games.
Wow.
Going into that, at the end of that Miami Heat series. So the future as far as Jalen Brunson's tenure with the New York Knicks is very bright, and it's pretty obvious that he is the new toast of the town. As far as a Knicks fan base that it didn't end well, but a very successful season nonetheless.
He's now probably one of the best deals also in basketball, only having a 5-year, $100 million contract, considering a lot of the other deals that we're seeing for players in the NBA. It's undeserved, a lot more not. All right, Anthony, for every good needs to come a little bit of a bad. Give me the negative. Why are you doing that with the hand? I hate when you do that.
Positive.
Give me a negative.
Negative.
Give me a negative for the 2022-23 season. That needs to
it may surprise some people, but not all. To me, it's Julius Randle. On the surface, Randle had a bounce back all-star type season, but when you dig a little deeper, you start to see a variance in his performances that became pronounced during the playoffs, to the point where you start to wonder if he really is a good fit with the offense now that it runs through Jalen Brunson, who has become the alpha for all the reasons Anthony just talked about. For the regular season, Randle's counting stats are pretty similar between wins and losses. In the W's, 26.2 points, 9.8 boards, 3.8 assists. He averaged 35 minutes a game. In the losses, 23.8 points per game, 10.1 boards, 4.5 assists, and 36.3 minutes. But if you look at his efficiency stats, the variances in Randle's performance start to get wider. In wins, his field goal percentage is 47%. His 3-point percentage is 36.2 on 8.7 attempts per game. His free throw percentage, 78.3 on almost 7 trips to the line per game. His true shooting percentage is 60.1. Offensive rating, 120. D rating, 109. It's a net of plus 11. In the losses, however, his field goal percentage drops to 44.6. His 3-point percentage drops to 31.3 on 7.6 attempts per game. His free throw percentage drops to 72.2 on those same 7 per game. His true shooting percentage drops down to 55.4. His offensive rating drops to 113. His defensive rating is 123. That's a net rating of -10. But as I said, it was the playoffs where the variances in his performance were particularly telling, and not in the all-star kind of way. He was practically a non-factor against the Cavs. He averaged 14.4, 6.4 boards, 3 assists, well below his season averages. He shot 33.8% from the floor, 23.5 from 3 on 6.8 attempts per game, and 70% from the line, and he only got there 4 times per game. His true shooting percentage was 43.5. His effective field goal percentage, which incorporates 2s and 3s, was 39.2. His offensive rating was 91. His defensive rating was 105. That's a net of -14. Against Miami, counting stats slightly better, but still not up to his regular season averages. 18.8 points, 10.2 boards, 4.2 assists. Only shot 41% from the floor. Only 28% from 3 on a little over 6 per game. 71.4% from the line on 7 trips. His true shooting percentage, 53.2. His effective field goal percentage is 47.3, but those are still well below all-star level. Offensive rating, 101. Defensive rating, 112. Net of -11. But the variances are where things, this is where it kind of gets egregious, in the 2 wins. His offensive rating was 126. His defensive rating was 115.5. That's a plus 11. In the 3 losses, offensive rating was 82. His defensive rating was 110.3. That's a net of -28.3. As bad as those numbers are, and make no mistakes, they are beyond awful. When you couple that, though, with his body language, which was worse than his net rating in those losses, well, it's not what you're looking for from a leader and a primary offensive option on a playoff team. And finally, there's the eye test. There just seemed to be more ball and player movement when Randle was off the floor. Randall may be a good passer, but he's also a ball stopper, plain and simple, full stop. And he doesn't help with offensive spacing. His style just doesn't really seem to mesh with Brunson's or Barrett's, almost as if he doesn't know how to function if he's not the focus of the offense, which shows up in his usage rate, especially in the playoffs. I look back at the 3 playoff series he's played since joining the Knicks, and his highest game usage rates all came in losses. Against Atlanta, his highest usage rate was 37.6, a number he hit twice in the Game 4 and Game 5 losses that eliminated the Knicks from the postseason in 2021. This postseason, highest usage rate against Cleveland, 36.4, in the 17-point loss in Game 2. Highest usage rate against Miami, 29 in the Game 5 loss that eliminated the Knicks from postseason play this year. Did Randall's postseason struggles undo all the repairs he seemingly made to both his game and his reputation over the course of the regular season? Does the loss to Miami open up the door to questions about whether the team can move up to the next rung on the contender ladder as it's currently constructed, meaning with Randall as a focal point? He's under contract for the next 3 years with a player option for the 4th, with a salary that averages $26.611 million per year. So moving on from him won't be easy. But just because something isn't easy doesn't mean it shouldn't be done, because maybe it's time that the Knicks actually did.
Well, the problem is, I think I'm going to provide a semi defense here, but it's going to be a very light defense. It's going to be like, I'm going to just throw something out there real quick. Game 1 against Miami, by the way, he was injured a lot in that Cleveland series, which is why he was coming back from an injury in Game 1, got injured in the game that he probably was going to go for a good number in Game 5. But in Game 1, you were just like looking for that guy to get that second shot, and that could have been Randall. But when Randall doesn't get his shot, this team he gets very clunky and the team gets very clunky. And you could tell from many texts that I've had this year with Anthony, Randall's just not a common player for this team to begin with, just because his shot is always a little funky, his positioning is always a little funky, and you know what? He's not a playoff player. That's becoming very simple. It's not an insult. He's just not a player who is going to handle the extra attention in the playoffs. He is a regular season player, and regular season players are not what the Knicks are going to need to get to that next level.
Nope.
Yeah, I would add. I think what has frustrated Knicks fans is the body language when things are not going his way and the shots are going. The body language, the complaining to the referees when things aren't going his way. We saw he almost got into a fight with Emmanuel quickly in one game earlier this season, arguing with the refs. You see that he was benched in one of the games in the Cleveland series down the stretch because
Game 4.
Game 4, when the shots are not going, he's disengaged in the defensive end when also. And a lot of the issues that the Knicks had defensively was in poor closing out poorly on Miami shooters, and he was one of the main culprits of that. So I mean, Julian Randle, he's a good solid player. He's improved a lot, tremendously since he's been in the league. But then it's the silly attitude, the whole hum response to criticism, and then there's the moments of just being disengaged. When he's not getting the boys, or he's not getting the calls that will frustrate anyone. And obviously, those things are starting to outweigh the fact that he had an all-star season, and that he's an all-NBA third team, because the second time in 3 years he's made all-NBA. But right now, what's sticking out is his lack of playoff success as far as helping the team win. And until that changes, he's going to be the lightning rod for a lot of criticism if things don't turn around.
Leadership encompasses a lot of things, and it can't just be, you can't just be a team leader when you're having a good game, or things are going your way and you're playing through a really good stretch. Leadership is being that guy that can lift the team up in any number of ways, whether he's having his best game or he's having the roughest of all rough patches. If your body language isn't consistent, if you're, being the guy, if you aren't consistently the guy who gets, who goes to your teammates, pats them on the back, says, come on, I got you, let's go, we can do this, who's encouraging, or, who is constantly being the biggest cheerleader, no matter what is going on, then you cannot, I don't know how you continue to put a guy like that in the position that Randall's in, because his conduct, and it's more than just his numbers. His conduct is detrimental to the chemistry of that team. And that right there is going to be the thing that prevents them from moving up to the next level of being, the type of contender that they want to be in the East and in the association overall.
But to be fair, again, you can go addition by subtraction, but they're going to need to replace those points. So, and there's not a lot of players right now in that rotation that can, but you can elevate someone from the bench. Now,
as I said, sometimes taking it one step backwards helps you take steps forwards.
You can't take that one step backwards when you're trying to grow, especially after having that fourth place season. It's not what we want in any fandom, and I don't think I want to start now. Okay, quickly moving on to Josh Hart, who I think is going to be their biggest off-season issue, just because of the fact that he's their only off-season issue. Everything else that they can do is just to find a new version in free agency. Now, the Knicks have his bird rights, so they can go over the cap to resign him. He is Bobby Marks, ESPN's little free agency guru guy, or the front office guy, says he should go about 16 to 17 million a year. I think that's in the right range. I think what we saw in Josh Hart, especially in that Cleveland series, is he fills so many roles for this team. Knicks went 17-8 in the regular season with him on the roster. And I just think that you can't get rid of somebody who, number one, just hustled his way through a lot of this series. He did take a little bit of a step back in the Miami series because Miami kind of really did focus on a lot of his weakness, and that is he gets easily pissed off. Not necessarily to the Randall extent, but he does easily get triggered a little bit, and he still has a lot to do as a scorer, but he's the perfect player for the coach that is going to be there next year in Tom Thibodeau. And Tom Thibodeau deserves more players like Josh Hart on this team. The one thing that Thibodeau is going to have is a lot of good Tibbs-like players, and that might be what they're going to need to do also in free agency. Now, what the Knicks do besides that, we have no idea, because there's a lot of things that kind of need to be fortified, and they're going to kind of need to make that next step. One other move that's going to be interesting is Manuel Quigley on July 1st is up for an extension, and this would have been a no-brainer, but he was disappeared hugely.
MIA.
Wasn't the same player, had a sprained ankle in game 3, didn't play, I think, for the rest of the series at that point. But what he did, his future will probably still be in the bench as a very good six-man since Brunson is the team's starting point guard and was a very good foil when Brunson was injured and when Brunson needed a break. So that's going to be the other big question going forward. But right now, the Knicks do have a core. The question is, what's the one thing that they can do to add to it to get themselves up into the upper echelon? But again, they got a conference semifinals appearance out of it this season, so the stock is going up. Let's just say that. But the question is, will it flatline? All right, on to the teams that are still playing for a little bit of hardware to add to their impressive collections, and Denver. The quest for the trophy of Sir O'Brien is nearly over. The holy grail of Sir O'Brien, may I say, as the Eastern Conference Finals give us a bubble rematch, a rematch of last year, a rematch of 2012, and a rematch of 2000. The Heat and the Celtics are just no stranger to each other. They played each other a lot, except now the Heat are an 8 seed, looking to knock off the highly favored Celtics. They were only given a 3% chance by some in this series coming forward, which is ridiculous. The Heat are up 1-0 in this series after, as head coach Joe Mazzulla said in his press conference, the Celtics won 3 out of 4 quarters. Congratulations. They lost quarter number 3, 46-25, and lost the game 123-116. Hey, 3 out of 4 quarters. Get you nothing. All right, Anthony, what's the key for the Miami Heat? As we always seem to give you the teams that you don't necessarily like and break your heart. What do you think?
Hey, Anthony and I are both in that boat in this Eastern Conference segment.
That is true, but that is true. But so what is the key for the Miami Heat in this series? I think it's pretty obvious.
It's a captain obvious, this one. That's it's the fact that playoff Jimmy is not a myth, and it's a real thing. We are literally watching probably one of the great postseason runs you think of that we at least I've ever seen as a basketball fan growing up. Think back to a month ago when the Miami Heat needing to win against Chicago and down in that game, and Jimmy Butler reels off 14 points in the fourth quarter, and Miami is able to sneak into the back door of the playoffs, has an HC. And since then, he's only averaged 31 points a game, put on a 56-point masterpiece for the ages in a come from behind win against Milwaukee. And if you watch game 1 24 hours ago against Boston, his fingerprints was all over that game, particularly the final quarter of that game. He finished with 35 points, 7 assists, 6 steals, and 5 rebounds. But in the fourth quarter, the ball was in his hands. Either he was scoring, he was facilitating for others. He looked like, hey, look, I'll co-star with Kevin Hall. He looked like Jalen Ramsey and making a few steals in the fourth quarter. But when you think of it, he is the engine that make this Miami Heat team go. It's not just the production that he's doing. It's not the fact that he's that he just plays at a tempo that he lets the game come to him. He picks and chooses his spot. He gets the guys involved. You saw Bam Adebayo had a good game last night as well. But Adebayo had a great series against Miami. Against the Knicks. When you think about Jimmy Butler, for his standards, having a pretty pedestrian, quiet playoff series against the Knicks. So it's Milwaukee and Boston are getting the $9.99 paid version of playoff Jimmy, and the Knicks got the free sample if you want to compare the performances. But you also look at it like this: Butler, his attitude and his confidence, I think, really trickles down that locker room. You look at guys like Max Strus stepping up and Kevin Love, and what a big difference of Eric Spoelstra put him into the starting lineup, because that's giving him an added shooter and a rebound, and that's helped floor spacing. You think of Kyle Lowry come off the bench, just being just a tremendous floor leader and production, but it comes back to playoff Jimmy. And you think about this, a month ago, we went from Miami possibly missing the playoffs altogether to being 3 games away from a return trip to the NBA Finals. It's just unbelievable. It's just an unbelievable postseason run. And you know what, Jimmy Butler, if he completes this and they win a championship, I will invest my money into Big Face Coffee and try to make this thing go nationwide, because I think back to Jordan in 1989 and LeBron 2018, when you think of postseason performances that literally lifted a team just on sheer will. And that's what Jimmy Butler is doing to this Miami Heat team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
it has done since he got there.
2 stats, by the way, that I love. Michael Jordan was the only player to do this. For the first time since 1973, 1974, only Michael Jordan and Jimmy Butler have had 2 road playoff games with 30 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 steals, which is insane. He's also the 3rd player in NBA playoff history with multiple games of 35 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 steals. Jordan and AI only did that. And the one thing I'm most impressed about is how he does this and also runs the entire team's offense. which is insane. This is one of the best postseason performances I have ever seen out of an NBA player. If they ever had a Conn Smythe trophy in the NBA, he would have already won it by now.
100%. Yep.
All right.
You know what? Rabbi, I'll do the honors to set jail for this segment because we saw Jimmy Butler, the superstar from Miami, have the ball in his hands in the fourth quarter. Jason Tatum did not touch the ball and did not have a field goal attempt.
Why don't you do my job for me now, man? Why don't you just do that right now? I'm too ready for this, and all of a sudden you give me the perfect setup. Anyway.
Well, because I have to ask you, like, what did he see that I didn't see? And the fact that Tatum basically was a non-factor in the fourth quarter.
Speaking of people who didn't see stuff, let's talk about the Celtics with Jason Tatum.
Okay, no spoiler alerts here, guys.
Look, we didn't actually say it, unfortunately.
It is the captain obvious choice for this, key for the C's, but that doesn't make it any less true. I fully believe that the winner of the battle between Jason Tatum and Jimmy Butler will decide this series. We already know this, but if you've been living under a rock, Anthony just reminded us, playoff Jimmy is for real. And if Tatum cannot step up to match that level of play, Boston's summer vacation is going to start early. And as the previous series against the Sixers showed, Tatum isn't always consistent with the level of play you'd expect from a superstar. He missed 14 of his first 15 shots against Philly in Game 6. Somehow managed to find his game in the fourth quarter in time to save Boston's season. In that historic Game 7 performance, Tatum put up 25 points in the back and forth first half, then it had 17 more in Boston's 33-10 third quarter that turned a 3-point lead into a 112-88 blowout win. Those 51 points that he scored are the most in a Game 7 in NBA history, breaking the record Steph Curry set just 2 weeks ago when he dropped 50 in Game 7, the Warriors' first-round series clincher against the Sacramento Kings. Tatum went 17 of 28 from the floor, 13 boards, 5 dimes, becoming the 5th player in NBA history with at least a 50-10-5 playoff game. Now, he scored or assisted on 62 of Boston's 112 points in Game 7. The Celtics only had 2 other players scoring double figures in that game. Jaylen Brown had 25, Malcolm Brogdon had 12. The crazy thing is, and according to ESPN's tracking data, Tatum scored all 51 points in the half court. Nothing in transition for a team that was number 10 in the NBA in fast break points per game at over 20 per. And he did it against 5 different defenders, including scoring 17 against Joel Embiid, the 2023 NBA MVP. Did it on drives, post-ups, step-back jumpers. You saw the entire repertoire. He hit at a 60.7% clip from the floor, 11 for 18 inside the arc, 6 for 10 from beyond it, after being just 42% through the first 6, including under 37% over the previous 3. He also chipped in going 11 of 14 from the line. Look, on struggling to find his game for most of Game 6 and his performance in Game 7, Tatum said, quote, "I was too locked in, too tight. Today I was more of myself. That's when I play my best, when I'm having fun." It was the 8th 50-point game of Tatum's career. 3 of those have come in the play-in tournament, 1 and the actual playoffs, 2. 3 other active players, Damian Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, and Jamal Murray, have multiple 50-point playoff games. Each of them is 1-1. Tatum is 2-0. Because I guess records in the play-in game don't count.
Apparently it just disappeared to thin air. I was
right. What is up with that?
You don't even realize that the Heat have actually lost at home since April 15th, but technically there's no stat that says the Heat have lost in the playoffs.
Go figure.
That didn't happen.
There you go. A little statistical side note, and something to keep an eye on for Boston on the defensive end. The series against Philly was a 7-gamer in which the overall point differential was 62. The Celtics' 4 wins came by an average of 19.8 points per game, while Philly's 3 wins came by an average of 5.8 points per game. Other than Game 6, the Celtics scored pretty consistently throughout the series, as did Tatum for the most part. The big difference was on the other end of the floor, where the Sixers scored 124.1 points per 100 possessions in their 3 wins, but just 95.8 points per 100 possessions in their 4 losses. That's defense. In the regular season, Philly scored less than 1 point per possession in just 4 of their 82 games. In the previous series, Boston held the Sixers to less than 1 point per possession in 3 games out of 7. Miami, they average 116.6 points per 100 possessions, 5th overall among playoff teams, second only to Boston in the East. Just saying. Back to Tatum. Him dropping 67 points in the final 5 quarters against the 76ers in the last series is why Boston is in the Eastern Conference Finals for the 5th time in the last 7 seasons. He has to keep scoring at that level for Boston, and he did so in game 1, at least on the surface, 30 points, 9 of 17 from the floor, only 1 of 3 from deep, and 11-11 from the stripe, and chipped in with 7 boards. But as Anthony said, was a complete 0 in the 4th quarter, and his playmaking overall for the entire game left something to be desired. 1 assist in 41 minutes against 4 turnovers, including 2 egregious traveling violations as the Celtics were attempting to mount a 4th quarter comeback after that absolutely horrific 3rd quarter. That's the one they lost, right, Rabbi? That was that was the 1 out of 4 that they didn't win, right? I have that correct. I have Joe Newsom's math correct there. The Celtics cannot afford to have Tatum not be Tatum for the full 48, not if they want to have a chance at a banner raising ceremony in the fall.
And he needs to shoot more, and he needs to take the most shots out of anybody on the floor. I think Jaylen Brown can be a good Robin to the Batman, but I think in the end, it's got to be Jason Tatum who leads them to victories or
100%.
ultimately defeat. But you need to go out swinging with your big guns. The Heat have a lot of different big guns. And when Kyle Lowry came to this team in the 2022 playoffs, he wasn't a big gun. He was terrible. In fact, a lot of Heat people just didn't even think he was an afterthought. And started the 44 games, and he's my X factor, by the way, for the Heat. He started 44 games. He appeared this season, missed 15 games, and then Eric Spoelstra decided to put him on the second unit. Originally, they were going to keep him ready for the playoffs with a non-existent play-in. That was still a month away. And guess what? The bench went from 27th in points per game and 26th in net rating to 8th in scoring and 4th in net rating. And he's stayed on that bench ever since. Regular season with Lowry starting 27 points. Again, it moves up to 39. And then the NBA playoffs, it's been 34.4 points per game and a 5.1 net rating. And he gets to play less, but he is more fresher. His assists are about the same 4.5 to 5.3 was the starter. Points at 7.9 to 12, but in the NBA playoffs, he's a 10.1 per game scorer. And he's shooting 44% in this playoffs before last night. And then last night, he was the only reason why they were still around in the second quarter, because he just kept making open 3 after open 3 after open 3. Kyle Lowry, when he came from Toronto to Miami, was expected to be kind of part of a big 3 with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, but because Eric Spoelstra kind of had little nuggets in his system and has had so much experience, he toyed around with Kyle Lowry's role, and boy, he has become a guy. He's still been nicked a lot in that second round series, just leading that second team, especially in game 1, making some big plays and giving that team and giving them the victory, especially when Jimmy Butler rolled his ankle with about 5 minutes to go in that game. Still don't know why the Knicks didn't attack Butler defensively, but that's for another show for another time. But overall, that's why the Heat are here. Not just because of playoff Jimmy, but because of the entire team stepping it up, and most specifically Kyle Lowry. For the Celtics, it's Marcus Smart. Now, remember when I had said before that Jason Tatum needs to shoot the ball the most on the floor? Marcus Smart, unfortunately, likes to shoot a lot. And some of the numbers that I
should.
Yeah, exactly. If you look at some of the stat lines, especially in the losses, 6 for 15 in game 4 of the Celtics Sixers series. Now, what he needs to be doing is he needs to probably take single shots. In fact, 9 for 19 and had lost in game 3 of the Atlanta Hawks series. Not a great 3-point shooter. He's never going to make 50% of his 3 points in a game, although he did last night. He only shot the ball 4 times, shot the ball 7 times overall. But what Marcus Smart does do is lead that team in a lot of different ways. Now, if you watch the first half yesterday of that game, Marcus Smart really put on a clinic in that first half. 10 assists to 1 turnover, and he was finding everybody on the court when they needed to be found. That's why Boston went into the locker room with a 9-point lead. And also, he also had 3 assists in the second half, 13 assists, 2 turnovers in 34 minutes. But his defense, he was the defensive player of the year last year, whether you like it or not. I think it was a dumb decision, but whatever. Again, that's for another show. And Malcolm Brogdon or Derek White was guarding Jimmy Butler last night. 18 points, 6 for 10 shooting on Butler. When Smart was guarding him, 8 possessions, 2 points. Marcus Smart is the X factor for this team. He needs to stay an X factor for this team and shoot the ball a lot less. We're seeing a lot of the good Marcus Smart, and if you get more good Marcus Smart, that's going to possibly give the Celtics a chance at a ring. All right, we're going to move on, and hey, look, it's another bubble rematch just in the Western Conference. Hey, maybe it wasn't a fluke, guys. Both teams haven't been anywhere near the heights of that season until now. The Denver Nuggets, it just really has been about just not being healthy over the last 2 seasons, but they've been the best team of the West pretty much since December. And even though they faded away late in the season, the 11 games of the playoffs, the Timberwolves and Suns have learned that didn't really fade away that much. The Lakers, though, they're 7th, although they're about to be down 2-0 in this series. They're only the 4th team to be 8 games under at any point during the regular season. And yes, they were 2-10 at one point. Any form of media will tell you that. And that's how they got this far. So can the Nuggets get over the hump? Or is the Lakers going to block the Nuggets' first finals appearance again? The Nuggets won game 1, 132-126. Nuggets are leading by 9 or 11. I don't remember what it was now, but they've had a very good
12 at the moment.
This game. Yeah, so they've had a very good fourth quarter after the Lakers were kind of doing some things in the first half. So, Anthony, with the Lakers now down 2-0, what is the key for the Lakers? Possibly down 2-0. What is the key to the Lakers in this series coming up?
Yeah, well, I thought the key was going to be Anthony Davis, and obviously not just when he got Nikola Jokic. It was also on the offensive side of basketball, and the fact that he was going to have to match production with Jokic, and we know what Jokic can do. In the postseason, averaging 21 points a game, but in that series against Golden State, I mean, he had 30 points, he had 20 rebounds, and a couple of times in that series, you kind of knew that Davis had to be a factor, not just scoring but rebounding defensively. I don't know if there's ever been a situation where you just score 40 points and feel like you've been outplayed the way Anthony Davis did in game 1. He scored 40 points, he had 10 rebounds, and was 11 and hit all 11 of his free throws. The problem is Nikola Jokic went for a triple-double, and he had that by halftime. 34, 21 rebounds, and 14 assists. And what the Lakers were doing, at least for the most part in this game, was that they will have either Hachimura or someone else guarding Jokic, which will allow LeBron, Anthony Davis to become more of a free safety defensively, kind of hang around the basket. Obviously, if the game's going on as we're on the air, the Lakers are getting smacked in the fourth. They've been outscored 20-5 in the fourth quarter so far, and they went through especially missed 9 straight shots that kind of allowed Denver back in this game. The Lakers were up by 9 at one point in the third quarter, but Anthony Davis tonight is just 2 of 11. Literally 9 of his 13 points is from the charity stripe. So one of the things, and Rabbi, we're going back and forth with this. One of the head scratching things about Anthony Davis is how he will follow up a strong performance with a very mediocre game the next time around. And it's been an even numbers for whatever reason. The odd numbers he's had monster performances, and the even numbers is the game too. It's an even number. He's been dreadful, and tonight is no different.
You can make a case. You can make a case that Anthony Davis's defense has been probably the best of any player in the NBA over the first 2 rounds, which makes what he didn't do against Jokic in game 1 a little frustrating because Anthony Davis has usually been a good two-way player. And right now, it just seems like he's just not been able to kind of give that same effort on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and give the Nuggets defense some credit too. They are doing a better job of keeping him a little further away from the basket, not letting him get to his spots. And also they're doing a better job of rotating the defense and double teaming him and making him take tougher shots. But right now, it's been more Jamal Murray and just turning into bubble Jamal Murray so far in this game. I mean, he is not missing this fourth quarter.
Okay. Before we get to the angle for Jay's Nuggets, which I think, and then we should have said spoiler alert, I hate the bubble Jamal Murray thing. Stop it. The man hasn't been healthy since the bubble. You can't call it bubble Jamal Murray. You can call it healthy Jamal Murray. He is one of the best scorers in the NBA, bar none, and this is his peak potential. So all this stupid bubble Jamal Murray, it is the dumbest nickname possible. Stop. That discredits what he does as a performer. Now, Jay, let's talk more about Jamal Murray as it's outstanding here. 14 points.
Rabbi, don't hold back, man. Why don't you tell us how you really feel there, man?
It's so stupid. All right,
okay, and I will. Full disclaimer. I will probably drop that phrase at some point. Just full disclaimer.
It's a stupid nickname. I understand it though. It's just so dumb.
And again, spoiler alert. My key for the, look, we all know how the captain obvious key for the Nuggets, will be whether or not Nikola Jokic can continue to play at his playoff dominating triple-double level against Anthony Davis. His overall game 1 stat line would seem to indicate yes. He went for 34 points, 21 boards, and 14 assists. So that bad fourth quarter does give me some pause. He does also have a triple-double tonight in game 2. But for me, the player to watch, the one whose performance as the Robin to the Joker's Batman, see what I did there, will be the key for the Nuggets to get to the finals. It's Jamal Murray. After missing the 2021-22 season due to a torn left ACL, Murray had a solid regular season and saw his numbers return to close to what they were prior to his injury. Points per game dropped from 21.2 to 20 flat. All of his shooting percentages dropped a bit as well. And while his minutes per game also dropped 35.5 to 32.8, not really a surprise for a player returning from that type of injury, one that I had myself. His assist total went up from 4.8 to 6.2, while his turnovers stayed at practically the same rate. So his playmaking and decision-making improved. Look, the Nuggets should have a matchup advantage against the Lakers with Murray's ability to create and his shot-making skill set. The type of player who normally gives Murray trouble in this postseason has been a perimeter player with length and athleticism. I think, the Suns' Josh Okogie, for example. The Lakers don't really have that type of player who can truly bother Denver's point guard over the course of his series. Jared Vanderbilt comes closest, but if you play Vanderbilt major minutes defensively, you also have to do so offensively, and he's a non-factor on that side of the ball. The Nuggets will basically ignore him, which will allow them to muck up the Lakers' offense. The other options for the Lakers are Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell, neither of whom will ever be confused with Michael Cooper as a defender, or Dennis Schrader, who's a pretty solid defender, but he gives up size to Murray. For Murray, it's been a long road back to, this stage of the conference finals. We all remember his breakout postseason in the 2020 bubble when he averaged 26.5 points, 6.6 assists on 50.5% field goal shooting, including 45.3 from downtown, highlighted by his 50-point duel with Donovan Mitchell in the first round against Utah. Then he tore that left ACL the following season on April 12, 2021, has missed the last 2 postseasons. And while he struggled, beyond the arc for stretches against Phoenix, Murray was averaging 25.9 points, 6.7 assists, and 5.3 boards this postseason prior to game 6 against the Suns. Morning of game 6, and this is right out of Jordan, guys. Morning of game 6, Murray felt so sick that he did not participate in the morning shoot around, stayed in his room for much of the morning and early afternoon. Denver cut their shoot around short because other members of the team, including head coach Michael Malone, were also feeling under the weather. And the team went so far as to list Murray on the injury report as questionable with a non-COVID illness. So with all that as lead up, of course, Murray started game 6 and put up 26 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists as Denver closed out Phoenix to advance to the Western Conference Finals. Little statistical side note and something to keep an eye on for this series. The Nuggets have scored 118.7 points per 100 possessions coming into the Western Conference Finals. Best mark for offensive efficiency in these playoffs. And they've done it against 2 teams, Minnesota and Phoenix, that ranked in the top 10 defensively in the regular season. The Lakers have allowed just 106.5 points per 100 possessions coming into the Western Conference Finals, which is the best mark for defensive efficiency in these playoffs. And they've done it against 2 teams, Memphis and Golden State, that ranked in the top 11 offensively in the regular season. So we have the number 1 offense versus the number 1 defense, and the paint will be the most hotly contested area of the floor in this series. Denver's offense has taken 53% of its shots in the paint, highest rate in the playoffs, converting at a 57.2% clip, which is 6th best. The Lakers' defense has allowed opponents to shoot just 50.9% in the paint, 2nd lowest overall. That mark drops to 47.9% with Anthony Davis on the floor. Back to Murray. He was terrific in his first playoff series in 3 years. He averaged 27.2 points per game against Minnesota, which was the 2nd highest scoring playoff series of his career, topped by a 40.9 game 2. Followed that up by averaging 24.8 points per game against Phoenix. He is an unorthodox point guard as he yields primary playmaking duties to Jokic, and he can be a little streaky as a shooter at times. Denver may need him to be, and sorry, Rabbi, here it comes, at his bubble peak best in order to give LA cause for serious concern. But there is a blueprint here for Murray to have a big series against the Lakers, which could be what tips the series in Denver's favor. Consistency will be a key, but Murray is good enough that he can be one of the 3 best players in this series. And if that happens, the Nuggets would have a big advantage. Got off to a pretty good start, going for 31 points on 12 of 20 from the floor, including 4 of 8 from 3, plus 3 of 3 from the stripe, along with 5 boards, 5 dimes, and 3 steals as Denver held on to win game 1. And I had to stop looking at the box score to do this segment. So far tonight, as I had to stop writing at that point, he had, might be more, you guys check me, he had 28 points. Denver was up 12 with 4 minutes and 38 seconds, which is when I stopped checking to go in the 4th quarter. 10 of 23 from the floor, 6 of 14 from 3, along with 8 boards, 5 dimes, and 4 steals in 39 minutes. If Murray keeps this up, and Jokic keeps doing what he's doing, I don't know how the Lakers respond.
It's a 2-point game, by the way, shockingly enough. But wow. Yeah, by the way,
Lakers on a bit of a run.
Yeah, Jokic's numbers, by the way, are just so insane.
Oh, and Murray's up to 30 points. Okay.
It reminds me of, like I said to Jay, this is like Bill Russell type numbers with just like the ultimate score and just doing everything in the stat line. And I think it's almost like we don't give him the MVP every year because it's just so easy,
right?
From what he does. It's like he almost farts out a triple-double every single time he goes on the court. He has another triple-double tonight. I mean, but Murray, again, whatever you call him, Bubble Murray, whatever, he has been outstanding. And it is the best Nuggets team starting 5, I think, that they've had. Now, however,
and you know, I know where you're going to go.
Oh, I'm changing that, by the way, because I'm going to do it last second because I've looked, and what the Nuggets need is not just a good starting 5. They need to make sure those non-Jokic minutes or that second team has a star, and they've finally gotten one in future net champion Bruce Brown.
Wow, you went there. You went there.
Has a plus 12 in this game, by the way. I love myself some plus minus stats, and that's plus minus of the team of the Nuggets by far. And since the Phoenix series, he didn't have great numbers in the Minnesota series, but since like game 2 and game 3 of the Phoenix, game 5 and game 6 of the Phoenix series, both wins, he had 25 points in game 5 on 7 of 11 shooting, 63%. Another 6 for 13 night in game 6. 46% from the field, but again, 13 points coming off of a bench that needs a lot because there's really nothing on that bench outside of Brown. 16 points in game 1, shooting 6 of 11 on the field, making a lot of plays in that first half and really being one of the best beneficiaries of what Jokic is doing. And tonight he has 12 points. He has 12 points, but he has a plus 12 and has played 34 minutes, really giving a sixth person on the Nuggets because Gordon is not always the best shooter. Porter Jr. is still young, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who was my first choice, got 2 fouls within the first few minutes of the game. So I feel like that's the guy in Bruce Brown who's really going to be the true X factor of this series. And I think he's doing a really good job in really cementing just being the good power forward on the court. Having him and Gordon, shooting forward, having him kind of sell Porter out when Porter is not at his best is such a perfect combination, especially for this team. On the other side, Austin Reeves is the team's third best player, and I don't even think it's close. His numbers this postseason has been terrific, and he's getting the shots, especially in that fourth quarter run that they had in game 1 and tonight in game 2 also. He's had the points, 23 points in that game 1, the clincher against Golden State last Friday, another 23-point game. And his three-point shooting, 50%, 50%, 80%, 55.6%. He's not automatic from three. He'll never be Steph Curry from three, for God's sakes, because, again, it's Austin Reeves, for good Lord. But he is just being a guy. He also has a plus 13 tonight on a team where Anthony Davis is minus 10, and my favorite, D'Angelo Russell, has put up another great minus 17. But Austin Reeves is really a great number 3 scorer on this team, and he's now becoming more of a consistent number 3 scorer. Don't know if that's a great thing, because that's the one thing I really like about the Lakers is they can throw a third or fourth guy. Like Rui Hachimura has only missed 2 attempts this whole entire
one tonight on 8 of 10.
Yeah, and didn't miss a single basket in game 1. But that's what you really need to see out there, a consistent Lakers scoring threat that's not AD or LeBron, and I think that really could be it.
I can't fault you, Rabbi, from switching to Bruce Brown, because Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has not done the job that we expected of him tonight.
He did in game 1, but this game has been terrible.
Yeah, Bruce Brown has really stepped up, and we saw him up close and personal when he was with the Nets. He's a Swiss Army type knife of player. You can put him out there, and there's no bad matchup for him defensively. He chips in where he needs to chip in. That's a solid. That's a type of player that all championship teams need to have.
And that's the type of guy who someone like Jokic can really get the most out of. All right, on to the National Hockey League and the quest for Lord Stanley's chalice. Even though we've been talking for all of this time, the Carolina Hurricanes and Florida Panthers are still in overtime in game 1. Even though the Panthers and Hurricanes, I've typed the Carolina Panthers, by the way, more than one time in my script. Even though it's not a bubble rematch, and the Panthers haven't gotten this far since 1996 when me and Anthony were 11. By the way, Anthony, happy 40th birthday coming up tomorrow. Oh, I know. It's
Saturday.
On Saturday, sorry about that.
Happy early birthday, Ant.
And in 1996, Jay was, never mind. But the only team to be East
Knock it off! Jeez.
But the only team to be East champs since the bubble are the Tampa Bay Lightning. So now the Prince of Wales trophy won't go too far. It'll stay in state or go up a small bit up I-95 to Raleigh. Anthony, despite the fact that the Hurricanes or Panthers did nothing to make you angry this postseason, at least I think. I mean, the Hurricanes got rid of the Devils, so yay on that. Let's start with that team on Tobacco Road. What is the Hurricanes' key to this series?
Well, to me, it's been the balanced scoring and the fact that they've been getting goals in a variety of ways. Think about this. They scored 24 goals in that 5-game series victory over New Jersey. That's good for 4.8 per game average. And going back to the game 6, the scoring was up. It's going up from 3.2 goals per game in the regular season, 3.6. And you got the variety of goal scorers in that series. Jesper Foss, he scored the game winner in that game 5. Brent Burns has been a big help, defensive. Jacob Slavin, the defenseman, shipping in. By the way, this is a team that had 2 defensemen with 18 goals in during the regular season. You think about this, also Martin Nikas, Jordan Martin Hook, the production that they've been able to get offensively has been impressive, despite the fact that the star player Sebastian Aho really was quiet in that second round series against the Jersey. He had 1 goal and 3 assists, and the 3 assists was in 1 game, by the way. But they also lost to Teravinian. Teravinian. In the first round. He had a broken hand stuff in game 2 against the Islanders. He's in the lineup tonight, obviously. And his playmaking ability, 12 goals, 25 assists in the regular season, does give them a big help. But Aho is the guy that I'm kind of looking at right now. When you think about the series he had against the Islanders, he had 4 goals in that series. And you think about his history in the postseason, just being a tremendous goal scorer. Carolina's going to need that because Florida plays a similar style of physical hockey and with the aggressive forechecking. And tonight, they did a good job of holding Carolina just 4 shots in the second period. If Carolina's going to win this series, Sebastian Aho is really going to have to like to lamp up more than what he did in the Jersey series. They got by because the Devils are still a young team. They play with their speed and not a physical team. But the Florida Panthers are a totally different animal. And Aho's going to have to be the guy that set the tone for Carolina if you want to win this series.
But yeah, Teravinian, by the way, the only player on, I think, both teams tonight with a -2, unfortunately, on the ice for both goals for the Panthers. Yeah, I think Aho, by the way, also has an assist. This is a team that has actually done more not healthy than they've done in years when healthy, like last year.
Yeah,
they've really made some. They haven't. I think they might be the only team. They haven't gone to 7. They've gone to. Yeah. They've had a 6-game series with the Islanders. That wasn't comfortable, but it was one where they won 2 road games, and the series against New Jersey again. It was either her blowout or it was that game 5. So yeah, Carolina is really hitting the right note here.
I would add too. You talk about the injuries they had. No, Max Pacioretty, Andrei Shevchenko was lost a season-ending injury in March. So those are 2 big guns that Carolina lost before they even got to the postseason. But they haven't missed a beat. At least offensively and defensively, their style of hockey has been able to hold up. They got great goaltending performances as well.
All right, let's go over to the Panthers, who are really the epitome of the President's Cup curse, of the President's Trophy curse, because they won the President's Trophy last year and only got to the second round and got swept. That was an 8 seed. They're in the Stanley Cup Eastern Conference Finals. So that President's Trophy is really evil, Jay. But the Panthers are not. What is the key to them to win this series?
All right. When we do our NHL playoff previews, we, like every other media outlet covering the chase for Lord Stanley's Chalice, talk about which defense pairings will match against.
And none of the outlets ever call it the Chalice except this one. So you've reached the right place.
The power play versus the penalty kill units. We even talk about the coaching matchups, but we all know that to a certain extent, goaltending is what determines who advances in the NHL playoffs. And Exhibit A is the Florida Panthers and their $10 million man between the pipes, Sergei Bobrovsky, who is the key to the series for them in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Carolina Hurricanes. If you were to ask 10 different hockey fans about playoff Bob, you get 5 saying they'd bet the farm on him and 5 saying no way in hell. It wouldn't be all that surprising, as Bobrovsky, even compared to the usual instability at the netminder position, has had one of the stranger careers on record. Couldn't nail down the starting role early in his career with the Flyers, but he went on to make 5 All-Star teams in 7 years and win 2 Vezina trophies. with the Blue Jackets, highlighted by a 2019 postseason run that saw him put up a .925 per save percentage and backstop a sweep of the number 1 seeded Tampa Bay Lightning. Until that year, his career save percentage in the postseason was .891. His record was 5-19. That series against Tampa Bay was the epitome of good playoff Bob, and it, along with his largely solid play over the previous 7 seasons, got him the 3rd largest contract of all time, $70 million for 7 years, hence the $10 million man, for a goalie, and some seriously large expectations as the Panthers' number 1 netminder. His 4 seasons in Florida can be classified as bumpy, based on those expectations. Not many goalies are capable of living up to that large a price tag, but it's not like Bobrovsky's been a revolving door either. Save percentages of 9 flat, 906, 913, and 901. It's acceptable, but fair or not, you do kind of expect King Heinrich Lundqvist in his standing on his head series stealing prime when you shell out $10 million for goaltending. Not a guy who goes 6-11 in the playoffs with an .899 save percentage. That's the epitome of bad playoff Bob. But something clicked when head coach Paul Maurice put Bobrovsky back in net at the end of game 3 in that loss to Boston that put them down 2-1, replacing Alex Lyon, who was 1-2 with a .326 goals against and a .902 save percentage. And since then, Bobrovsky is 7-2 with a 2.82 goals against and a .918 save percentage in 10 playoff games and an .881 goals saved above expected. By far tops in the playoffs in that span. He was absolutely lights out in the 5 games against the Maple Leafs in the second round, going 4-1 with a 189 goals against and a .943 save percentage. In Florida's series clinching 3-2 overtime win in game 5, he had 50 saves. That's what $10 million goaltending looks like. And when the puck drops tonight, which it's in overtime now, Bobrovsky will have set a career high for games in a single postseason. This is now his 11th. Couple of side note nuggets that no one but me may find interesting. This is going to be brothers against brother and old friends turned foes in this series. That's right. Eric Staal and Mark Staal of the Panthers will face Hurricane captain Jordan Staal in the first Stanley Cup playoff series that includes all 3 brothers. Eric played 12 seasons for the Hurricanes, 03-16, won the Stanley Cup with them in 06, and was their captain for 7 seasons from 09-16. Florida coach Paul Maurice coached Carolina for 11 seasons over 2 stretches, 97-03 and then 08-11, taking them to the 02 Stanley Cup final where they lost to the Red Wings in 5. Hurricanes coach Rod Brind'Amour played for Maurice during each of his stints with Carolina, and then after retiring in 2010, got his start in coaching as one of Maurice's assistants. Here's the other thing that I find interesting. The Panthers beat a team that had 43 more points than them in the regular season, Boston, 19 more points than them in the regular season, Toronto, and now faces a team, Carolina, that finishes 21 more points than them in the regular season. That makes the Panthers the 4th team to face 3 teams that had at least 19 more points than them in the regular season, joining the 81 Rangers, round 1 against the Kings, round 2 against the Blues, semis against the Islanders, the 84 Canadiens, division semis against the Bruins, division finals against the Nordiques, conference finals against the Islanders, and the 91 Minnesota North Stars, who are now the Dallas Stars, division semis against the Blackhawks, division finals against the Blues, and the Cup finals against the Penguins. Look, we know that Matthew Tkachuk needs to keep putting up points. He has 16 on 5 goals and 11 assists through 12 games, though nothing tonight. After putting up an NHL career high and Hart Trophy type 109-point season on 40 goals and 69 assists. And the Panthers need to keep playing their style of play. Be physical, keep the puck deep, and cycle it like they did in their series wins against Boston and Toronto. But ultimately, guys, this is going to come down to which playoff Bob they get. And if the goalie we saw against Toronto sticks around, the fun in the Florida sun will continue for the Panthers. So far tonight, he's allowed only 2 goals on well over 35 shots. None of those goals were scored at 5-on-5.
Nope, but a lot of them. By the way, 17 pulled goalies this postseason, which is the most since 1991. So more things about Rod Brind'Amour, who I really think is the key to the Hurricanes, because this is a team that, again, injuries definitely befuddled this team towards the end of the season, and they really have lost a lot of firepower, and they've just seemed to be better. The Hurricanes have won a playoff series in 4 out of the 5 years Brind'Amour has been this team's coach. They've never gotten anywhere closer to the conference finals, but this might be the best team they have. They were actually, believe it or not, the 6th best odds going in to the conference semifinals despite having the most points. You just don't realize that they had a 113-point season when the team above them has a 136-point season. So I really think
Talk about
that
flying under the radar.
Yeah, I really do think that the Carolina Hurricanes are going to be always well coached. And Brendan Moore, who again Brendan Moore, who actually played for Maurice, as mentioned before. Maurice is the reason Brendan Moore actually became a coach, because he actually saw those things. And
Carolina, sorry, Rabbi. Carolina just hit the crossbar.
I saw that as a goal, shockingly, but it was not. But that's really what I think is going to be the key for Carolina, because the coaching battle between him and Maurice is very interesting, especially considering Maurice was very panned in Florida this year because, again, this is a President's Trophy team from last year that just made the playoffs and, in fact, played Carolina in the final day of the regular season to avoid playing Boston. They lost, so they had to play Boston, but it turned out maybe that was pretty good to really help the legacy. Carter Verhaeghe, by the way, did score a power play goal, the game-winning goal in that Toronto series, the last game that they
has one tonight too,
played, and she does. Sound like Ferguson all of a sudden doing that stuff. But the Islanders, former Islander, is a really good option on a team that is just offensive firepower everywhere. They just never really realized their potential until this point. And it's going to be very interesting going forward to see Florida in what is now a playoff crazed area, because, you know, South Florida just needs more than just the Heat. Apparently, they just need good hockey teams as well. But this is going to be a very interesting postseason series between Florida and Carolina, because Florida has had the infrastructure to make a run like this for years. We just didn't think after the regular season this would be it, and it truly is. They're not your team. They're not your normal A seed. Neither are the Heat, by the way. But the power of South Florida, man. All right. On the other side, guess what? It's a bubble rematch from 2020. By the way, fun fact, now all 4 of the conference finals in the NBA and the NHL have been rematched in the conference finals since the bubble. Because remember, the Islanders and the Lightning, which is the Eastern Conference finals in the bubble, played the very next year as well. So bubble again, not a fluke. The Stars and Golden Knights have a bit of consistency going. We like that on this show. This is the Knights' 4th conference final in 6 years. Not their last 6, just their first 6 of actual existence. The Stars were in the Cup finals just 3 years ago as well. Who gets the coveted Clarence Campbell Bowl? Bet you forgot that was the name of the Western Conference trophy. Nice. Do not lie.
Nice.
All right, let's start off with the Golden Knights. Anthony, viva la Golden Knights. What is the key to get Vegas back to the promised land that they were in 2018? Again, their debut season. And since they have a night mascot, their question Lord Stanley's Chalice actually makes perfect sense in this segment.
I love for the days of the Prince of Wales Conference and Clarence Campbell Conference. Bring it back, along with the Quebec Nordiques. Okay. You know what, Aiden Hill. I don't know if there's more you can say about what he's been able to do, stepping in for obviously an injured playing goalie in Game 3. He's the 5th goalie, by the way, that the Golden Knights have started at some point this season. So that is just unheard of. But you know what? When you make 38 saves against a team of Connor McDavid, on the other end, with an elimination game to get your team to 4 wins shy of the Stanley Cup final, you deserve a round of applause and a standing ovation. 38 saves, sporting a 934 save percentage in the 5 games he is playing. It's a small sample size, but he has been absolutely stellar. And that Game 6, he made some unbelievable saves that kept Edmonton from getting back into the game. When they had a goal opportunity, particularly in the middle stands in the second period, where he was peppered with numerous shots. But in the regular season, he's been pretty successful too. He was 16-7-1 record, 91% save percentage. Now I just mentioned the 93%. We think about he's 3-1 so far in the games he started. 219 goals against. He is slated to start game one in the conference final. By the way, you notice all four teams are either from the South or like I know Vegas is technically
it's warm weather. It's a warm weather hockey. It's a warm weather hockey.
It's a.
Yeah, you got
I
that.
mean, it's the NHL with a big flavor of Southern hospitality. When you think about the teams left over, but yeah, Adin Hill is going to be the guy. And you think about his opponent, the Dallas Stars, who can't score, and they overall. Am I correct? They had the best record in the Western
Yes,
Conference.
they did. Yes, they did.
Yes, they did. So it's going to be a challenge, and for the Golden Knights, who have a great home ice advantage, it's important for them to at least get one of the two games. They have to get the split against Dallas because Dallas has been a really good home team all season. They had a bit of a heart attack of a scale by a Seattle Kraken team that just wouldn't go away, but literally down to the final seconds. But Adin Hill, when you think about the offense that the Stars have, it's going to be key for the Golden Knights. He has to be as good as he's been in the games he has started so far in this postseason.
By the way, fun fact: here are the 5 goalies mentioned. By the way, this season, I believe we start with Logan Thompson, who played 36 games. He was backed up originally by Yuri Patera, who ended up playing 2. That led to Laurent Brossoit, who was the guy who got injured in game 3 and was the guy who was going to be their goaltender this playoff. That led to Adin Hill, who used to be a Shark. And somewhere in all of this, you just have a Stanley Cup 2-time winning goalie in Jonathan Quick backing up that guy as well, who
and by the way, Robin Leonard is whole too. So it's basically 6 goalies that they've had to cycle through. It's just been unreal. Yeah. It's been the merry-go-round that the Golden Knights has had as a net-minded. And goalie go-round. And yet here they are. They're in the Western Conference Final, 4 wins away from getting to the last step. I've never seen this before. I've never seen a team start this many goalies in one season and still be successful. It tells you what kind of team that the Golden Knights have. And like I said, I've never seen it before.
I've never seen all of these teams start multiple goalies this postseason.
It's been a whole
goal going into this as well, by the way. Just a heads up. Carolina has goalie issues. Ottinger of Dallas got benched at some point during the series, and he's probably a goalie that I thought could easily have won the Vezina this year. Boston had to make a goal. There's so much goalie upheaval. It's ridiculous. All right.
Yeah, you talked about that. Carolina, Anderson, and Vonta has basically been splitting goalie duty in this postseason.
Yeah, that's
have
a health issue.
When you have more than one goalie, you have none currently.
Unless you're the Las Vegas Golden Knights.
Unless you're Las Vegas or unless you are like half of the teams. By the way, Anthony gave me the key to this setup. So, Jay, give me a key for Dallas's most successful playoff team this century. That would be the Stars. Sorry, Cowboys, you don't fit into this picture.
Nope. Before I do that, I'm going to give you guys one more fun fact about both leagues' playoff series. Matthew Tkachuk, the star forward for the Florida Panthers, and Jason Tatum, the superstar forward for the Boston Celtics, were high school classmates. Enjoy.
They actually had a picture of that, by the way, if you search out on the internet this week. From when they were
video too, by the way.
A video, by the way. I'm sorry.
There you go. And there's a really good piece about that in The Athletic. And it is now, we're going to double overtime in game 1 of these.
Double overtime.
As I take my spot here. Okay, so second verse, same as the first. The Western Conference Finals is Exhibit B of a series, depending on which version of a goalie we get. In this case, it's Dallas netminder Jake Oettinger, and he's the key for the Stars, as he's the best goalie on either team, despite having a bit of a feast or famine performance in each of the previous 2 series against Minnesota and Seattle. Overall, Ottinger is 8-5 with a 2.75 goals against and a 903 save percentage in 13 games in the playoffs so far. But when you dig a little deeper, you get some playoff Bob vibage going on. Overall, Ottinger's series against the Wild was solid. 4-2, 201 goals against, 929 save percentage. But he struggled in games 2 and 3, going 1-1 with an 860 save percentage and a 3.59 goals against, putting the Stars in a 1-2 hole. He rebounded and was lights out in winning the final 3 games with a 101 goals against and a 965 save percentage plus a shutout in game 5. Against Seattle, he was truly a Jekyll and Hyde goalie. 4 games with a save percentage under 900, including 2 where he was under 800. One of those, he was barely over 700. He went 1-3 in those games with the only win due to his offense lighting the lamp 6 times. Head coach Peter DeBoer yanked him twice in that series, games 3 and 6, with the first time being completely on Ottinger, and the second less so, as DeBoer was did it to send a message to the rest of the team that they'd let their goalie down with the way they had played in front of him and what they allowed the Kraken to do in his kitchen. It worked, and the goalie the Kraken faced in Game 7, his 22-save performance to close Seattle out, was one of his strongest outings of the postseason so far. That's the version of Jake Ottinger that makes the Stars a legit Stanley Cup threat. The thing about him that stands out most to me when I was researching this, in both the regular season and the playoffs, is how he's been able to bounce back after a loss. Coming into that Game 7 with Seattle, Ottinger was a ridiculous 21-1-3 in games after a loss this season, including 4 shutouts and a 933 save percentage. Over his career, he's 40-11-5 after a loss with a 919 save percentage. On Monday, 17 seconds shy of a Game 7 shutout. He allowed 1 goal on 23 shots. That's a 957 save percentage. It also helped that his teammates kept his crease relatively clean. They forced the Kraken into taking a lot more shots from the perimeter, many of which were either blocked or went off target, though a couple did ring off the post. Ottinger came up aces when the Stars needed him to, but Dallas did a great job of not forcing him to carry the load the way he had to last year in Game 7 in Calgary, where he faced 67 shots in 75 minutes and 9 seconds of ice time, stopping 64 in that 3-2 overtime loss. Little statistical side note here. Dallas has allowed the fewest expected goals per 60 minutes, 2.19 in the playoffs, and the second fewest high danger choices, 9.18 per game. Their defense is headlined by one of the best in the NHL in Miro Heiskanen, who had 73 points in the regular season, 11 goals, 62 assists, and already has 9 dimes in the playoffs. Dallas also has veterans Ryan Suter, Esa Lindell, and Colin Miller, along with 21-year-old Thomas Hartley, rounding out a rather deep blue line in front of Ottinger. Here's the thing for Dallas, guys. They need to continue to be aggressive in their own end. Their defensemen need to continue to look to end possessions as early as possible. If they can consistently do that in front of Ottinger and score the first goal so their system can do its work, they won every game in round 2 when they scored first, then the version of Jake Ottinger we're more likely to see is the one who stood on his head in those final 3 games against the Wild and then stoned the Kraken to get the Stars here. That guy gives Dallas an advantage between the pipes. That guy can backstop a team to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah, and again, that Seattle team is a very weird team to play, and I think this Vegas team is by far the best offensive challenge that they've had, and one of the reasons for that is Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel, who is finally, after being the chosen one in Buffalo, being that second overall pick back in the day, finally got traded last year to Vegas, and Vegas missed the playoffs for the first time in their history, and that kind of set themselves back a little bit. But this year, he's had a very good season. They made the playoffs, top team in the Western Conference, and he is a big-time possibility of getting the Conn Smythe Trophy because he has 6 goals, 8 assists, had 2 3-point games in the Edmonton series, which really helped out in victories. And the man is just a guy who you could expect 20 minutes from the ice all the time and is always a weapon at any point. So, and Jack Eichel is just becoming a guy who is realizing all of the unmatched potential of the potential that we saw in Buffalo, but he needed to get out of there because why would you continue on the team with this now the longest playoff drought in the 4 major sports when you can go to a team who has had 5 appearances in 6 seasons? Now, what Dallas has is Joe Pavelski, and every year there has to be a story of veteran who is ready to hoist Lord Stanley's chalice for the first time, a man who was in San Jose, got to the Stanley Cup Finals back in 2016, and played with San Jose and has over 1,000 points in his entire career.
Hockey gods owe him one, Rabbi. They really owe him one.
The hockey gods owed Henrik Lundqvist a Stanley Cup. So the hockey gods are just mean. But overall, Dallas, he suffered a concussion in game 1 of the Minnesota series, comes back, and what does he do in game 1 against Seattle in that series? Oh, he scores 4 goals with a plus-minus of 3. They lost that game, by the way. Shame on Dallas, but did go on to win this series as Pavelski ended up with the most points ever, or goals ever in a series for Dallas in their history, which includes Minnesota, with 8. So Joe Pavelski, who is only a year and a half younger than Mr. Anthony is about to be in 2 days. He's 38. Not going to get too many chances more to win a Stanley Cup. This might be his last chance. And if it is, Dallas is going to need him because he has been the number 1 offensive option so far in at least the second round, and probably will be going into the series. That series again starts tomorrow night in Vegas. All right. Before we go, I want to talk about Ja Morant because I like to rant sometimes. So before we leave you tonight, let's talk about Ja Morant. He's been suspended for all team activities. Oh no, off-season team activities, whatever to do, due to being caught wielding a gun on IG Live.
Allegedly.
Again, well, it wasn't his Instagram Live, so progress, yes, allegedly, but there is video out there. We just need to know it's actually photoshopped. All right. So before we leave, I want to tell you some things that Ja is actually not. He is not stupid. When you do something like that on social media, you're not stupid. You're idiotically defiant. No one can touch me because I'll just get another 10 games and a rehab trip to Florida. You don't know that you have a law and order commissioner who, he's not David Stern. He's been a lot more lenient on players. But when you show someone up, just ask Draymond Green, who got suspended for a game while he was in the building, guess what? You're going to get punished whether you like it or not. So guess what? You're not entitled. And that's why he did it. He's not influenced. When you have the contract he does, you can do a thing or two yourself. He made the decisions on who to hang with his crew. He made decisions on what to do. And he's acted like, I hate to say it, a thug at several points allegedly this season, including pointing a blazer that Indiana Pacers players had after a game. Allegedly. We're going to hit the quote on that in this segment. So you can blame your crew or say you need a new crew. But when you do stuff like this again and again, you don't need a new crew. You need a new yourself. He is not going to get suspended for a year, though. Just stop. You do things like this that looks really bad. But again, whether he was wielding a gun or not, allegedly, on IG Live, he did not break any laws. And you can actually open carry a gun in Tennessee. Welcome to 2023. And we have suspensions for drug violations that are not that harsh. I did not agree with what JJ Redick had said on First Take a couple of days ago, but unfortunately is absolutely right. This is why a collective bargaining agreement did happen. And yes, as much as personal conduct policy is sort of a thing, and he needs to be a role model, unfortunately, what he's doing, it's kind of unwritten ground for anything else. Now, stop the kangaroo court. We the people do not get to decide punishments for others. We don't get to say, I hear it's going to be a year. I hear it should be 40 games. And how is that going to actually help him? We've learned that Promises Rehab Facility in Florida doesn't really do that. That's what makes the last point for me. He is not important. Let me explain. The Grizzlies were that young, scrappy team that arguably gave the biggest challenge last year to the eventual champion Golden State Warriors. Now, despite a number 2 seed this year of the postseason, the Grizzlies became having the attitude of the bad boy Pistons with having the play sometimes of the 2023 Pistons. This keeps up for Ja, your city. If this keeps up for Ja, your city, which you've been a role model for, will go from one of the best crowds in the league, whoop that trick, to one of the teams that might not get the best lineup when a real team comes to your town. The world of the NBA only cares about winners or you're a laughing stock. They only care about once-in-a-lifetime players or you're just the laughing stock. And they care about people who are being role models who can be representatives of the league or you're a laughing stock. The first and third sentence could ruin the second. The Ja is a once-in-a-lifetime player, and all of this stuff is pretty much putting his star down in the ground, even in his young career. If that happens, Ja, the only way we'll care about you is when you do something stupid again. Even though I don't think it's stupid. Not when you're doing something special. And this doesn't make you getting in trouble. This makes you possibly irrelevant. That's it. Full mic, stop, drop mic, whatever.
And why don't you go? Because I'm gearing up for one, and I want to let you get your piece in.
Well, I will say this: the two things that I would say about this, because there was a lot of Second Amendment advocates that were making their voices heard, and as much as I respect Steven Jackson, I totally disagree with his take and trying to make a narrative turn this into a narrative that's not there. But I will say that there's a difference between having the right to own a gun and being an actual responsible owner of a firearm. And we will see now on two separate occasions, Ja Morant being very irresponsible and careless with a firearm in his possession. And look, if he has a legal license to own a firearm, that's his business. He's in a state he is in a state that is an open carry state. However, he's also in a state that has a very high crime rate, that is very notorious for gun violence. And when you are someone like me and you see a young, successful 23-year-old man, a black man, portraying and even glorifying a negative stereotype that young black men in this country has had to deal with for years, it's almost like an insult and a slap in the face, because it's like, hey, look, I've read up on Ja Morant. He, whether you agree with his father T Morant now, but with his behavior and being more of a celebrity than a dad, that's up to opinion. But his mom and dad did a great job giving him every opportunity to live his dream. He's from a middle class home. He has a sister that plays high school basketball. He has a 2-year-old daughter. I mean, that's the part that I think people are leaving out as well. He's a young father as well, and to see him glorifying a lifestyle that he doesn't have to do. It's just one of the more mind-numbing things about this whole situation. It's like, look, ultimately, the blame falls on Ja. Just plain and simple. Because even if you want to say, okay, the people around him, fine, but he is still choosing to keep these people around him after the first time this happened. And now here we are again. I woke up Sunday morning, I see him trending on Twitter, and I'm like, okay, what's going on now? Did he say something, or what is this? And then, the rabbi texted me the link to TMZ showing him flashing his gun yet again. And this is why I say, if you're not going to be responsible to own a firearm, you shouldn't have one in the first place. And I look at it as, look, I'm not a fan of guns. That's my personal feelings. I'm not gonna deter anyone from legally owning one, but be responsible. I mean, you're not at a gun range and learning the proper training to use a firearm. And yeah, people say, well, nothing happened. But what happens the next time that he's parading around and a gun actually does go off? Some of these handguns, they do have very sensitive triggers. I've read up on a few of them. I have a cousin who was a hunter. He had firearms in his possession. Some of those babies are very sensitive, and you gotta be very careful. Maybe Ja doesn't know how to use a firearm properly and doesn't know how to put the safety on. We don't know, but that's why I said there's a difference between the right to own a gun and just being responsible with one. He's probably not the only one in the league who has who has possession of a gun. But the reason why we don't know anybody else because they're not on social media doing what
Being
he's doing.
stupid.
So being stupid. So that what I take away from this is that John needs to be held accountable without question. And just the second time, I don't know who's talking to him, but ultimately it comes down to John needs to simply grow up and take the next step from there. But also he has to realize, yes, there are people that looks up to him. There are kids that aspire to be like him. He's a great story when you think about his rookie season, how he improved as far as being one of the best players in the game. He's one of the faces of the NBA. He is a successful young black entrepreneur of himself in America. And this is what you're doing to basically you're hurting yourself at the end of the day. And look, the league, the Memphis Grizzlies, they're a business. They are entitled to tell him we don't want to see this and to act accordingly because they have a brand, they have an image, they have to protect themselves. So ultimately, I guess it all comes back to Ja Morant. He needs to grow up one way or the other. And you're hoping that he get it through his thick skull that he needs to take it down a few notches because he's the one that has everything to lose at the end of the day. And heaven forbid, you don't want him to put himself in a situation that he don't need to be when something can definitely go wrong. And you have plenty of people out here in the shoes who would love to be in his position, but you have a lot of jealousy, a lot of envy that goes on as well. And this is why you don't want to portray this kind of image for yourself because you don't know what kind of individuals out there that may take him up on that and test that very theory if he's about that life. And he has to be.
I don't think he's about that life.
No, we all. I think we
he
all.
He might be about that life. I don't know.
But
all right, we gotta get to.
Yeah, when you're 200, when you're making this kind of money and you are living a life that you work your tail off to achieve, you do not push yourself in a position where it could all disappear or the unimaginable happens. And we really hope it doesn't get to that level.
Yep. Rabbi, I'll just jump in and wrap, and wrap this up.
Take it home.
Yeah. As I said to you guys on text when it all broke, all of the platitudes from his mea culpa after the last incident, the whole apologizing to his family, teammates, coaches, fans, partners, the city of Memphis, and the entire Grizzlies organization for letting them down and saying he would, quote, take some time away to get help and work on learning better methods of dealing with stress and my overall well-being, end quote, now ring pathetically hollow, as does the supposed contrition he showed in his meeting with Adam Silver back in March, where he said in an interview with ESPN's Jalen Rose, quote, in the past, we didn't know what was at stake. I realized what I have to lose. And for us as a group, what we have to lose, it's pretty much just a being more responsible, more smarter, and staying away from all the bad decisions, end quote. That he doesn't condone any type of violence, and he takes full responsibility from his actions, and quote, I made a bad mistake. I can see the image that I painted over myself with my recent mistakes, but in the future, I'm going to show everybody who Ja really is, what I'm about, and change this narrative that everybody got. In a statement Morant made earlier this week, he said he knows he has, quote, disappointed a lot of people who have supported him, and this is a journey, and I recognize there's more work to do. My words may not mean much right now, but I take full accountability for my actions. I'm committing to continuing to work on myself, end quote. He's 100% right. His words mean absolutely nothing. He's learned absolutely nothing, allegedly. Sam Amick, who's a senior NBA writer for The Athletic, who's covered the association for the better part of 2 decades while at USA Today and Sports Illustrated, where I first started following his writing, among other media outlets, had a great feature piece on Morant this week in which he wrote, All Morant had to do was learn from his mistakes, to realize that that NBA stardom demands more discretion and more discipline than he had shown in this past year. Tighten up the inner circle, realize the social responsibility that comes with being a beloved public figure, and perhaps most obvious during this terrifying time of weekly mass shootings and all the unspeakable deaths that have come with them, put the guns away for good. But now that it's happened again, with Morant making that unfathomable choice on IG Live on Saturday while riding alongside his close friend Devontae Pack, his luck has almost certainly run out. It's about accountability now, the kind that has been in such short supply during this saga from both the league and the Grizzlies. Now, Pack has been at Morant's side and thus at the center of all of the other incidents that we covered back in March that came to light in the wake of the incident at the Denver nightclub. The "it's free to see how hollows feel" tweet and the accusations about Morant beating up a teenager after a pickup game at his house, allegedly, threatening a shoe salesman at a local mall, allegedly, and taking part in a confrontation with a high school student, allegedly. And you have to wonder at what point Morant wakes up, grows up, and realizes that it's not in his best interest to keep rolling with Pac, even though they've been each other's ride or die from way back in the day. When Morant referenced us and the group, that's who he's referring to. Amick also laid plenty of blame at the feet of the team, writing, "The Grizzlies, who announced on Sunday that they've suspended Morant from all team activities while the league investigates, have created a classic small market culture where the fear of upsetting the star supersedes all and undermines any chance they might have at being holistically sound. We've seen this on the court, where the team's lack of poise has long since become a hallmark of this once promising era. We've seen it in the way the Grizzlies handle the media, with league-mandated rules being routinely circumvented long before any of these incidents took place, and excuses made all along the way in an attempt to cater to their superstar. That's on all of them, from owner Robert Pera to general manager Zach Kleiman to coach Taylor Jenkins on down. I agree with him 100%. Enough is enough. Memphis, grow a damn spine." I also said to you guys on text that Adam Silver needs to tell Morant that he's A, grounded indefinitely, and 2, I'm calling your mother. I was obviously being slightly facetious, but you guys understand what I'm saying. In the wake of all of this, he is not someone the league should be promoting as a future face of this game. I have said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. Playing in the NBA is not a right, it's a privilege. And when you repeatedly, and now it is repeatedly, engage in conduct unbecoming that besmirches the association, as Ja Morant has now done twice, your privileges need to be revoked until Adam Sandler and the rest of us are convinced you've actually learned your lessons and not just paid lip service to them like Ja Morant seems to have done, allegedly.
We've hit the alleged quota, by the way. I would say this, though. I would just be very careful. I don't think it's going to be an indefinite suspension because...
No, I don't think it is either, for all the reasons
I know.
that JJ Redick said.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be an indefinite suspension, but it needs to be. And honestly, for the Grizzlies' sake as an organization, they need to lay the hammer down first because that franchise is getting out of control. That's just my opinion. And
I agree with it.
What goes on. I would talk more about coaches, but it's almost 12 o'clock. And even though the Florida Panthers and Carolina Hurricane game still is not done, we're off the air.
Well, welcome to playoff hockey, man.
Yeah, man.
It's been a while. We had some really bad second round games for a while. Where just like there was so many.
That's true. Cream rises to the crop when you get to this point, Rabbi.
Yeah, you know what?
We hope.
You know what? This should be a good series. I mean, when you have two teams that play a very similar style, I mean, I'm not surprised this game went to overtime.
Nope.
Yeah. All right.
Nice way to kick off the conference finals.
Let's get out of here. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I'm Steve Rabinowitz. We are on the social medias, as the kids say. Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLens Live, where you can hear me and Jay rant at whenever. And when is it going to be? Mind your damn business. I have no idea. YouTube.com/OnTheSportsLens, extremely taped and on demand. And
our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sportslines, where tomorrow you will find a link to this very show on YouTube, should you choose to watch it again, or some other interesting sports tidbits of note that we think will be worth your time to check out, read, or just simply enjoy.
Hey, it's baseball season here in New York and Troy. All right, hate to be mean saying this because we all lost our teams, but enjoy the conference finals. I really, really want you to. Have a good night from all the sports. We'll see you next time.
Yeah,
Good night,
everyone.
everybody.